on transportation, infrastructure, lands, border protection, Veterans Affairs, and procurement. We'll now start the public hearing. We'll start with bill number 75-33, and I'll ask Senator Barnes to briefly introduce the bill.
Mr. Chair, Bill 75-33 is an act to add a new Section 7120.4 to Chapter 7, Title 16 of our Guam Code annotated, and this is relative to the firefighters' license plates. This bill, Mr. Chair, is a measure that was requested by various firefighters as a means of recognition. This bill will allow firefighters to promote their brotherhood and of course their sisterhood, and will serve as a morale booster. More importantly, these license plates will also bring a greater awareness to those individuals who are first responders, making them more visible in the community. And I'd like to say that very often these public servants are underappreciated, and this was one small way to show that their island appreciates the hard work and sacrifices that they make every day. I will note, Mr. Chair, also that it was rumored that this would be another free provision if this was passed into law, that the firefighters did not want to pay for the license plates, and that is not the case. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this bill heard, and I'm appreciative that both fire chiefs are here, our government of Guam, and also with Anderson Fire, that they're here to present testimony. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Barnes. Signing up to give testimony is Mr. Kevin Riley and Mr. Stanley Torres. So if you please step forward. Also signing up in support of the bill is Mr. Derek Cook from the Anderson Air Force Base Fire Department, Mr. Kyle. Mr. Kyle.
Where's Kyle?
Yes. From Anderson Air Force Base, Mr. Arnell Dorn, also from Anderson Fire, and William D. Castillo, Anderson Fire, and Joseph Charleston, Anderson Fire. I noticed that also the fire chief is here, but your name is not on. Do you want to do? Okay. Mr. Joyce Nicholas. And I also have Joey Manibusan. Were you going to give testimony? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Chief St. Nicholas.
Actually, Senator, thank you for that. But if I could, we'll let the man who got this all started, Mr. Kevin Riley, start, if that's okay.
Okay.
So thank you, Senators, for your time today. A letter that was written to Chief St. Nicholas by myself said that the morale of the GovGuam employees is a great concern, and the teamwork and camaraderie needed amongst the firefighters who every day put their lives on the line to protect life and property. We are requesting special group license plates be implemented by Department of Revenue Tax. We're not seeking any waivers for cost. Actually, any special privileges. We're actually, just like the vanity plates currently available, we will be able to pay an extra fee on top of that just for these plates. So here's my written testimony. Hapaday Senators, during a trip stateside in 2012, I noticed that every state had a specialty license plate available for virtually any type of organization. Upon my return, I looked into the cost, requirements, and details associated with these specialty plates. I presented the idea for a firefighter license plate to Chief Joey St. Nicholas, and he agreed it would not only be a morale booster, but also a revenue generating source for GovGuam and the firefighters organization. Following the application from the Utah State Commission, the proposed fees would include a mandatory annual donation from the holder of the license plate to our organization. After getting the approval to move forward, several senators were approached, and while waiting for feedback, Chief St. Nicholas also mentioned the idea to Fire Chief Stanley Torres at Anderson Fire. It was his suggestion that the license plate be developed for all firefighters working on Guam. Although firefighters worldwide are part of one brotherhood, I believe we should be allowed more time to choose a design and where the monies collected would be deposited for the use of our organization. The original intent was to encourage other agencies, both local and federal, professionals to follow suit. It would open the door for Rotarians, the Rotary Club of Guam, for GAIN, for Girl Scouts of Guam, to formulate and develop their own license plates that they could tack on additional charge that would just benefit their specific purpose. Although I'm in favor of this bill and thankful for the work Senator Barnes has given towards this endeavor, I believe that there are issues that need to be discussed and agreed upon amongst the personnel of GFD, ARF, Navy, and Anderson prior to the final drafting. Thank you for your time.
All right. We'll have questions after testimonies have been given.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Tina Muña Barnes for introducing this bill. Senator Ada and Senator Wampat, thank you for allowing us to be here. I am in full support of this bill, and for several purposes of why Mr. Riley presented this to you. The bottom line is while being biased to my position, I don't think the morale in the Guam Fire Department is actually all that bad, and neither is in my brothers in the federal and military counterparts. But anything to encourage and give it its required maintenance dose of good morale, a project like this is definitely a welcome effort. I see a couple of things. While a radio station wants kind of focus on the morale aspect of it, for me it's all about identification. Oftentimes us firefighters, to include myself, have stopped by in our off time with our personal vehicles at car accidents, for people waving down for somebody that needs help. And part of that process is making sure that right up front we gain the trust of the community, and that comes with identification. When you're at your most vulnerable state, such as a car accident where you think your world just almost ended, the last thing you want is some stranger coming up to you and, unfortunately, it's not like that just yet here on Guam. But when you know that it's a firefighter coming to you, you're gonna definitely feel a little bit more better as far as your safety and security. So by seeing a vehicle roll up with a firefighter license plate, not only just blocking off the accident scene for the safety of those that are within the scene itself, but for identification and so that people know who's in charge or who is willing to take charge and take care of everything and get the required resources there. So that's, for me, that's the biggest piece of this. That's for firefighter plates, that's the most important avenue on this one. And but it doesn't preclude, and I actually recommend, and I've seen it myself stateside, for even teachers to get that plate, for all these other organizations to get that on top of the revenue tax charge, that donation towards whatever cause that they have. And for us, the cause would be towards activities and morale within the organization, to further promote our camaraderie amongst all our rescuers of the island. So I'm in full support of this measure, and more than willing to engage in discussion to see what we can do to make it better. Thank you very much for your time.
Chief Torres, before we go further, I want to congratulate you on your selection as the chief for the Anderson Fire. Is it the Anderson Fire or overall?
Anderson Fire, sir.
Okay, great.
Well, Senator, Chairman, thank you very much for the congratulatory. And I'm here actually representing the Western Pacific Island Associate Fire Chief as the president, pretty much representing all the firefighters here on the island as well as the Pacific. And Senator Tina Muña Barnes, thank you for coming up with this bill. Senator Ada, and Madam Speaker. I'm here in support. I guess leave it to the last person. Chief took all the thunder on everything, but I'm here to support it. And what Firefighter Riley here is doing is very long overdue for the island. He did mention something about the original plan was different fire departments, but here in Guam, it's not like the States where we're separated state by state. Here, even though our jurisdiction is different line of defense, we all work together. We all work for the same cause, whether it's on base or off base. And on behalf of the Chiefs organization, we fully support this bill, and we look forward to working with the senators to come up with a final plan and get this thing going.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from speaker? None? I have a question. Mr. Riley, you indicated you probably need a little bit more time to deliberate on the design of the license plate.
That's correct, Senator. We just want to make sure that it applies to, all the services that we have, and make sure that all the firefighters, at least a majority, agree on the design.
I've actually gone through a couple of iterations of, making specialty license plates, like for the Gold Star widows, and for for the veterans and all that stuff. And we were actually able to see in front of us a mock-up of what this license plate would look like. We can do one of two things. We can revise the bill so that it moves forward and it just gives the policy direction and that authorizes the issuance of these firefighter license plates, and then maybe language to the effect that then the fire department with the Department of Revenue and Taxation will sit down to develop a design, because I'm sure Rev and Tax is going to want to get back with its manufacturer to see if that license plate if it's feasible to make that. And that then once the legislature gives the, once the bill is enacted authorizing the license plate, it's really up to you guys. It puts the ball back in your court to come up with a design that will work.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
Okay. So I'll give that over to the sponsor of the bill, and she'll take care of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. So there being no further questions, then bill number 75-33 is COR is deemed duly heard. Okay. Thank you. The next bill to be heard is bill number 84-33 COR. It's an act to transfer the wastewater pumps located on the school grounds of Southern High School and Louis P. Ontalon Middle School to the Guam Water Works Authority. So I'm going to go ahead and call forward Mr. Sam Taylor and Mr. Mark Miller. But first, I'm going to ask the sponsor of the bill to introduce the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's rather unusual, of course, that we've actually found in our school grounds 2 wastewater pump stations that are actually located in the premises of Southern High School in Santa Rita and Louis Ontalon Middle School in Barrigada. Now, throughout the years, of course, there's been some sewer problems that has become very persistent, and many times under what DOE would have to do is because they've reached out to GWA and they claim that just because it's in their premise that they will not, come in and take care of the sewer pump itself, and DOE then had to pull out, of course, use some of his monies to be able to contract this out to private companies because it really poses a threat towards our school environment, especially the children. For those of you who have been to Southern High School, because I actually went there when there was an overflow, and the entire field, the children can't go out. They can't go to the football field. They just won't be able to do that. So really, the location where it's at has really presented a problem where the children go out and need to use the facility every day. And that is the exact same situation in Ontalon Middle School. Again, it's also in the back. During their field, and when it rains, of course, it gets really flooded, and when the pump overflows, then of course you combine that with, other problems. And then, again, we were not able to continue on with the learning at the school, especially for PE and health, because of that situation. Now, DOE, of course, although yes, it may be the largest department, DOE is not in the business at all of having to take care of sewage pump, as they don't have the human resources, the mechanical resources, the financial resources to be able to manage, maintain, or otherwise service the wastewater pumps. And I just think it is appropriate that these pumps then should be under GWA, who has the expertise and the resources to be able to operate these pumps. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Miller. Please introduce yourself for the record. Turn on your mic and yeah. Please speak up a little bit. People are watching and.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. Buenas and Ed.D. Speaker Wampat, Senator Tom Ada, Senator Tina Barnes, and Senator Tony Ada.
Okay. You're going to need to speak up a little louder. Even I can hardly
Let me
hear
get it
you.
closer. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Bill 8433. The Guam Consolidated Commission on Utilities, as well as the Guam Waterworks Authority, does not support this bill as written. The CCU and GWA hereby wish to present the following testimony in opposition to the bill. The government of Guam, through 12 GCA Section 14229, has provided assurances to GWA's bondholders that the government of Guam will maintain the rights of the bondholders, and to also not transfer any unfunded mandates to the Guam Waterworks. Specifically, Section 14229 states, the government of Guam is fully committed to ensuring the authority has the ability to implement the capital improvements authorized to be paid by this legislation in order to meet the needs of the Guam ratepayers for reliability and affordable services. The government is also fully committed to ensuring that bondholders are protected to ensure full and timely repayments of their loans. In order to mirror the previous pledge that allowed Guam Power Authority to successfully re-enter the financial markets and the Guam AB Wampan International Airport, GWA hereby pledges that, or the government of Guam hereby pledges that any bonds of the authority issued under this article remain outstanding and not fully performed or discharged. Rather than read all this, I'll just skip down to D. Okay. D is the most relevant statement in the passage here. Not to transfer any additional non-system operating responsibilities or other unfunded mandates to the authority without providing for the payment for the cost of such additional responsibilities, with the exception of annual supplemental and annuities and COLA contributions paid by the authority on behalf of retired employees of the authority or its lawful predecessors, as may be required by the laws. The language above makes it clear that the government of Guam protect GWA bondholders by agreeing not to transfer the non-system operating responsibilities, unfunded mandates, because transferring the pump station is directly in conflict with the government of Guam's pledge, because it both constitutes a non-system responsibility and an unfunded mandate, and GWA urges the legislature not to pass this bill. The language of GWA's bond indenture also expressly prohibits the transfer of unfunded mandates to GWA. Section 6.17 of GWA's bond indenture states, the government hereby pledges to the holders of all bonds the following. While the bonds remain outstanding and not fully performed or discharged, A, to maintain the rights, powers, and duties of the board and the Guam Public Utilities Commission or their respective successors in accordance with the law, to fulfill terms of the bonds and of this indenture. Maintain the rights and remedies of bondholders to provide the act and indenture. C, to protect the exclusive rights of the authority to operate, maintain within Guam any water or wastewater system operated by the government or its designees by preventing the acquisition or operation, maintenance, or permitting of instrumentalities of the government or any other public-private agency, entity, or person to operate a separate, uncompetitive, water or wastewater system, and D, not to transfer any additional non-system operating responsibilities or other unfunded mandates to the authority without providing for the payment of the cost of additional responsibilities. With the exception of annual supplemental annuities and COLA, contributions paid by the authority on behalf of the retired employees of the authority or its lawful predecessors, as may be required by other laws of Guam, the authority includes this pledge and agreement of the government in the indenture as authorized by Section 14.229 of the Act. It is clear under Guam law and this indenture with the bondholders that any attempt to transfer Southern High's pump station violates the pledge of the government of Guam as provided to its bondholders. It is important to maintain this pledge because failing to do so will only show bondholders that the government of Guam is not serious about its commitments it has made to the bondholders. In sum, any default on the terms of the bond terms or conditions could have disastrous results of the people of Guam, which include but are not limited to higher interest rates, which could result in GWA customers, including the government of Guam, paying much higher rates for water and wastewater services. The intent of the language we cite to in this testimony is to protect the ratepayers' interests, which we believe is more important than protecting the bondholder interest. Any unfunded mandate of this type proposed by this legislation simply forces the taxpayer to pay for the expenses that are not theirs, nor are related to the system they own. All customers of GWA and GPA, public or private, may pay for their costs of water and wastewater infrastructure behind the meter. DOE is a large government agency with the largest budget. Thus, DOE should be able to manage their resources in a way to make sure internal infrastructure needs are met from their own budget without burdening utility rate players. Thank you for this opportunity to present this testimony.
Mr. Taylor, were you going to provide testimony?
No additional testimony unless questions are raised.
All right. Madam Speaker?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you guys tell me the pumps that are currently at these schools, who do they service? Is it strictly the students of Antlan Middle School and Southern High School?
Yes, ma'am.
Just them?
Yes, ma'am.
No one in the community whatsoever at
Just
Southern
the
High School?
School facility, ma'am.
Now, my understanding is that when these, like for example, Southern High, I'm not sure about Antlan because that's an older school, that when they were given the property, when it was returned to the island, that the pump was there already. And that was given to the government for school 1994. 95 is when then they started construction.
The pump station at the school, as far as I know, only serves the school. I've not gone down to the pump station myself, but that is what I have been informed. I do know that there was a incident not too long ago where that station failed, and we actually assisted, but there were no other customers affected. It was strictly the school and the school grounds affected by that station's failure at Southern High.
So in the, I understand your arguments here, and somehow it always seems to be the same argument that we've always heard from GPA, GWA, anyone who really has gone out to get bonds, and I think it's very unfair to say that, it would, threatening, of course, the legislature and the people that with this transfer, that it's going to cause now higher interest rates and, for water and wastewater, and that we're not very serious about our commitments at all. That's a very unfair statement, and I don't think that this is a true statement that can be used really to justify why these pumps shouldn't be transferred. So in your opinion then now, tell me as the GWA, who is the most qualified entity in the government of Guam then to actually take care of sewage pumps, schools or GWA?
Actually, ma'am, since it belongs to the school, like most everything else that is a part of this interior of the infrastructure of the interior of the school, vendors are available. There are many experts in the community that could actually take care of the station if put on a contract to do so. And
So what because it's in the school grounds, and that's just the way, of course, that the property was carved out and given to them. And you're saying then that if we transfer this 2 pumps without then providing maybe the resources, we're one government. So if the legislature provides the resources to GWA to maintain these pumps and to turn them over to GWA, would you accept them? Would you agree to the transfer?
There are several requirements that need to be made. I think,
Please speak up.
okay. There are several requirements that need to be made. I think the cost to bring the station to the point where we can accept it, which would be a severance from the school grounds so we can have 24/7 access. It belongs to GWA.
Well, in a Southern High School,
Yes.
it's outside the fence.
Okay.
So you have no problems getting in there.
Again, there's the cost factor. The cost to operate it annually would have to be paid. And for us to take it over without some rate or fee being charged to DOE would violate the bond covenant.
DOE is paying for water, power, and sewer, so that should not be a problem. And we appropriate monies for that. Naturally, all utilities. We're not going to say we're not going to, give them the monies. So that means then, the monies that's provided for them to pay for the sewage system, water and sewer, that then automatically those monies, yes, will be able to go to GWA. I think what needs to happen here really before, we just can think of just not accepting it is that, first of all, really, I think everyone would agree, DOE is not in the business at all to operate, maintain, a pump. It's an educational institution. You guys do that. So I think it's important that maybe what you need to do is go out and figure exactly what this would cost. And then so we would know what we're dealing with. And if we have to then, as the government, is to appropriate those monies then to your agency or to DOE to give to your agency and just take it completely away from them, then we'll do that. But to just outright just say, it's going to violate any bond covenants, I think is...
I think, ma'am, it might take, again, the PUC and CCU policy changes to make those exceptions. I'm sorry, soft speaker. It would take a policy call, but you're talking about possibly an arduous method of correcting the situation. You're petitioning to have policies revisited. You're jeopardizing the bond indenture. It's a whole new rate structure that may have to be created because the pump station, again, only serves the campus and not really the rest of the ratepayers of Guam. So that would be a cost that would be identified like other costs like commercial 1, 2, and 3, agricultural. So you're developing I'm not saying you are, but there's a chance you may have to create another rate structure for school systems with pump stations.
Well, what are you charging schools right now? Why would it be any different if you're already charging the schools based on, a certain category? That shouldn't be any different then for those 2 schools.
We charge the schools the water they use, and of course, a percentage of the water is transferred to wastewater cost.
So couldn't you use those same rates?
Maybe I take.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, the current rates that GWA has in
Identify
place.
yourself, please. for the
I'm sorry?
record. Identify yourself.
My name is Sam Taylor, GWA Legal Counsel. The rates that GWA has in place right now for operating its system do not include the expenses associated with either operating or maintaining or refurbishing either pump station. So what Mr. Miller is trying to get at is that we would have to create a special rate, probably a surcharge, would be charged to DOE or the government through some means, make sure we get that paid, which is the annual operating expense for those stations. There would also probably need to be in the language of this particular statute, or bill, funds providing for the carve-out of the property, surveying. There's a host of things that need to be done. Like Mr. Miller said, bringing the station up to par. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that station before we would agree to accept it. We have rules currently where we are supposed to, make sure that whenever we accept a pump station, that the pump station is capable of being operated by GWA and it meets our standards. If the pump station is not within our standards, then we wouldn't really be allowed to accept it in any event. So there's a lot of costs involved. So, but one of the problems with this bill is that there's no funding source identified whatsoever, and one would need to be in order to make that even a reality or a possibility, and it's a significant cost. In addition, what Mr. Miller's talking about is you'd probably have to create a surcharge for the annual O&M expense, which would include probably an amortization of the life cycle costs and overall repair costs for the station throughout its life. So, for example, whenever a pump goes bad, you'd need to have included in that specific rate the ability to replace that pump when it comes due, whenever it reaches the end of its useful life. Anything else happens, say, for example, it gets hit by a typhoon, any damage or whatever. So we would need to actually have to go approach a PUC and figure out, there's a complete new rate there that would need to be created just for that. And it doesn't exist under our current structure. So, like I said, the operating expenses for those two pumps aren't even included in our existing rate. So it isn't like we just assume it and not incur additional expenses, because there are additional expenses which we need to recover our costs for them.
Are you aware of any other sewage pumps anywhere on the island for any specific community?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of them, actually. They're being operated by communities that GWA has not accepted.
Okay.
There are, yes.
All right, so...
Do you have an example?
Zero Down, Jigo. That's one.
Is that the only one?
No, there are more. I would have to probably go with our operations folks, but I do know there's more.
To hear that. This conversation now really is actually where I want it to go. I want a discussion of what then needs to be done. I realize you're right, when I first wrote the bill was because nobody wanted to hear of it. But it was just becoming a really big problem, of course, where DOEs are just not the experts, to handle this. And currently, if they're using monies and we're appropriating the monies to maintain these two pumps, then, we're still one government. And why not then use those monies based on what it is that you've said that may need to happen to operate it, to maintain it, to refurbish it. If it means even if there's going to be a surcharge, either way, if we're going to appropriate those monies to DOE specifically for those two pumps, why not to an agency who can handle this?
Well, I think there might be a disparity in the amount that you're appropriating now in terms of what DOE is receiving and what we would actually insist be the actual amount given for the...
But the big difference here is that the government, the entire people of Guam supports the schools, funds the schools. They're not a revenue-generating department versus GWA.
I understand.
So I understand the big difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Barnes?
Si Diyos Masi, Mr. Chair, and I could understand the Speaker's frustration on this, but I did have a couple of questions. First of all, is CCU aware of this legislation, and was there a resolution by the CCU to oppose or accept this bill?
Yes, ma'am, they're aware, and the resolution, yes, they are.
They are. No, but
Basically, the testimony went up for discussion at the last CCU meeting, and they are aware of the testimony.
So based on that meeting, is there anything in writing that this legislative body could receive in reference to the discussions of this bill?
Just the minutes of
Just the minutes?
meeting, yes, ma'am.
And the reason why I bring that up, because I want to ask When this pump station was built, because I know that not all the schools have that, at any time was GWA engaged in the building or the facilitating or the monitoring of this? I'm not saying present. I'm saying at any time when the school was being built or in its stages of finalization before, was GWA involved?
They would be part of the permitting approval process. So
The permitting and processing. The reason why I'm asking that is because, like Speaker noted, we're the same government, or we're the same government of Guam and the same team that has to provide for the necessities. And I know that based on other old structures in the 36 different schools or the 40-some different schools that we have for public school, that not all the schools have pump stations.
Correct.
Am I saying that right?
That's right.
So-
Majority don't.
So I do know that there has to be a way where GWA was engaged not just in the permitting process, but in the building and facilitating of this. Did that ever happen?
I would have to research that.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask if they could do their homework. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because Speaker noted that this bill was introduced because DOE is not in the Department of taking care of wastewater and pump stations. There was a reason why it was built. I do know that based in working with the government for over 33 years, not in this field, but just knowing that there was a facilitation on this. It's come up in the past before when a lot of the drainage system and the sewer systems, before the private owners had to hook up on public lines, there was infrastructure that was needed, and I know that there was a need. And because you guys say it's a violation of the bond covenants, I want to say that I do know that based on at least these two schools, that there was a monitoring in the past. And I do know that when they talked about the shifting of properties over, that there was supposed to be a government-wide assessment, just like with what DPW was doing with the roads and the land takings and all that, because in order for us to build something, we'd have to pass all the specifications. I know that that was being worked on. So I think it's very important that if you can take this back, at least from my perspective, is to take it back to CCU and PUC, because when these schools were being built, there was a need for this, and that's why GWA was in that monitoring. And if it was taken away, because I can find it, I'm almost positive I can find it, and I'm just asking that you at least go back to the table and ask, is PUC aware of this bill also? I don't think so.
No,
They were given.
But
PUC was given a copy of the bill.
oh, but was there discussions, Mr. Chair? I was
No.
just hoping
When we
because
sent out the notices for the
they were
hearing,
invited, right?
they were part of the stakeholder list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's really important also that we at least extend information out to PUC to ask them where it is, because, like I said earlier, I do know that in the monitoring and in the building and in the working of the schools, that this was even as recent as the renovations of Antalan Middle School. I'm positive of it. So, Mr. Chair, I almost want to be a co-sponsor of this bill, working closely with the speaker, because I know that this thing came up then. So I'm just asking that, you know, every autonomous agency comes back with bond covenants and all that, but I need to remind these autonomous agencies that we're the same government, and we have to be able, and DOE is not in the business of having the expertise or the discipline in order to run these facilities. And if it's carving out and giving it, because it's not giving authorization, I think it's giving it back to GWA, am I right? It's giving it to GWA to take over, because we're the same government. So I'm just saying that this is my analogy of knowing that based on what GWA's had to do in the past to work with the administration who was ever handling it at that time. So I think it just needs further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Adams?
I think it's important, though, if I may, to note for the record that this pump station has not been and has never been deemed a part of GWA system for the purposes of the language set forth in the bonds. In other words, it's not part of our system now. It never has been deemed to be a part of our system, and it still is not a part of our system. So that is a critical distinction that must be made.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Senator Eda?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One, before I report this bill out, there's some information that I would like to have. First of all, I do know that there are some properties out there, there are some subdivisions which have pump stations, sewer pump stations, within their premises to be able to take the sewage from that premise, from that subdivision, to be able to pump it into the GWA, but it is not a part of. So can you provide a list of at least properties that you are aware of? I know that there's Zero Down. I know that there's a subdivision somewhere in Mongmong, Toto, Maiti, that is, when they built the subdivision, the developer actually built the sewer pump to be able to take the wastewater out of that subdivision and to pump it into the GWA. So the reason why that list would be important is because with the if this bill should pass, this may be the precedent for those other properties to come in and say, GWA, you take over this thing. It's getting too expensive for us to maintain it. So I would like to have that, and we will follow this up with a memo asking. You getting this, Blaine? With a memo of the additional information that we need. Also, has bond counsel been provided a copy of this bill to provide his input? It's fine that you have identified the specific sections in the bond covenant that says why you can't do this, why you can't do that. But let's face it, sometimes if the bond counsel opines on the same thing because he's the bond counsel, that also carries a lot of weight. So if you can ask bond counsel to provide input. I would ask that GWA, you stated, Mr. Miller, that you have not, as far as you know, GWA has not gone down there to see what's the condition of this pump station. And so that then, if you can have GWA make a visit down there, and give an estimate as to if GWA was to take over this particular facility, it would do so provided that facility meets certain GWA standards. And so how much would it cost to bring that facility up to that standard? So if it's going to mean having to change out the pumps and the wirings and all that, so what's it going to take? And if it's going to cost GWA $250,000 to bring it up to standard, then that information I think will be very helpful, and the annual operating cost to GWA. That's 3. First one was the identification of properties elsewhere that have pump stations that have in fact made requests to GWA to transfer for GWA to take over these things. I would imagine that if this bill was to be enacted, along with the transfer of the pump station will probably come also the power that goes with it. So that would be part of the operational cost. So you just need to, if you can, verify that. And so I think what it comes down to is, well, on the one hand, there's the inkling that this is going to violate bond covenants, it's going to be expensive and all that stuff. I think we should at least go down there and be able to say, look, I've seen this thing. It's going to cost so much money to bring it up. Here's going to be the annual operating cost. And in fact, nobody else gets serviced by this pump system. I have to say that although, GWA is in the business of producing water and disposing of wastewater, the fact of the matter is that that may be true down at the wastewater treatment plant and running the infrastructure and all that, but I can only envision that this pump station that we're talking about is really just an extension of the school, that's where all the wastewater goes through, and then this pump station pumps it out to Guam Water Works Authority. And that it's purely a mechanical facility, which many companies actually would be able to maintain. In the same way that private companies would maintain the air conditioning systems in these schools, which obviously DOE does not have the expertise to do. But nonetheless, and they recognize that, and so they contract out the maintenance of these things. So that's basically 4 items that I'm asking that GWA prepare to submit to the committee, and that's information that the committee will need before it reports out this bill. Okay, so when would the committee like to have the information? 10 working days. Of course, we can't drive how soon bond counsel will be able to come back and provide an opinion on this bill, but I would hope that they would be able to come back, in a reasonable amount of time. Fair enough?
Yes, it's fair enough. The information you request is certainly fair enough.
Okay. And I think actually there's one other item, and that is if you can provide a copy of the minutes, and if it's not clear from the minutes that the CCU definitively said no, we will not support this bill, then something like that really probably should be conveyed in the form of a resolution which states the CCU's formal position, since really everything goes through the CCU to the outside world, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Senator, though, there is not a meeting this month, so we would not be able to have something like that in the event that the minutes don't reflect what you're indicating until July. So that's just for the record.
Well, that's okay, because we don't have session till August.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So there's no further questions. We'll consider Bill 84-33 as being having been duly heard. Thank you very much. And the last bill that we have is Bill 84-33. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Bill 97-33, introduced by Senator Anthony Ed.D. Go ahead, Senator, please introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Bill 9733 is really a consumer protection measure. And in cases where an insurance company determines that it is not feasible to repair a vehicle, in other words, when the vehicle is deemed totaled or total loss, such vehicle shall be issued a salvage title by the Department of Revenue and Taxation. When insurance companies determine a car is totaled and pays off the full insured value of the car, it requires the insured to sign over the title of the car. And the insurance company usually sells the remnants of the car for parts. But quite often, repair shops restore these vehicles to the point that an unsuspecting buyer would be unaware that it has been in a major collision. These vehicles are then sold as used without informing the buyer of the collision history. Buyers would not know if the chassis was welded or if the airbags were deployed or what other major problems is with the vehicle. A buyer should always beware, but having a salvage title for the vehicle will alert prospective buyers that they may have more damages to the vehicle than is evident. And this bill is about buyers' right to know. The car that they are buying is safe to use on our roadways, and it doesn't really prevent anyone from selling a total car that was repaired. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And signing up to testify on the bill is Mrs. Jennifer Camacho, providing oral testimony. I notice, Mr. Crisostomo, you did sign up, but you're not giving. Okay, you're well covered. Okay. All right, Jennifer.
Hafa buenas. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Ada. Of course, Senator Muña Barnes and Senator Ada. My name is Jennifer Camacho, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the Guam Automobile Dealers Association. And for the record, that consists of the 6 new car auto dealers who are Cars Plus, Guam Auto Spot, Atkins Kroll, Nissan, Triple J, and Prestige Automobiles. Our President Jay Jones was unable to be here, but I have provided GATA's written testimony, and I would like to provide that with you today as well. Dear Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the members of the Guam Automobile Dealers Association, I would like to offer my support of Bill 97-33 regarding the issuance of salvage titles for vehicles deemed a total loss in insurance claims. The auto dealers of Guam find that it is very difficult to determine the history of a vehicle in order to ensure that it is safe and reliable. This new law would protect dealers and consumers from unknowingly selling or purchasing vehicles that have been substantially damaged. Furthermore, this new legislation will help regulate the sale of these total loss vehicles by individuals and repair shops throughout the island who exploit the loophole in our current Guam law. Often these vehicles are sold to unknowing consumers who have little recourse should there be future mechanical or safety concerns with these rebuilt vehicles. Passage of this legislation would benefit all of Guam's citizens, and therefore the Guam Auto Dealers Association offers its full support.
Senator, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. I have. Do you have questions? Sure.
Jen, thank you for being here, and as representing the automobile dealership, I'm really glad that they came to you guys came to testify today. One of the concerns that came up to me as a co-sponsor of the bill was, what about the fact that if it's deemed a salvage title, that if the car gets refurbished, that none of the insurance companies will insure the car anymore. And in order to drive on our streets, you'd have to have insurance. So would liability insurance probably be the only, that portion to, or could a refurbished car get insured 100%, or they too would be notified of the car that it was salvaged and repaired?
I think it's going to come from the insurance company. If they're the ones who are going to have to deem it unsalvageable or the need to be refurbished. I think where the loophole is we're seeing some of the, the smaller shops who are taking these vehicles and which have been completely totaled and, putting them together. They look good, they look great, but of course the consumers don't know that they've been salvaged. And I think that's where the drop in the system is right now, is they're able to get it registered, not knowing that it's a salvage unit.
Could a salvage unit be insured?
Right now, yes.
So if the salvage title was on it, please. Just because it was brought up to my attention.
I mean, if it's unknown, if it's unknown that it's a salvage title, which is why GATA really wants to come forward and have this, push this forward so that the protection could be there.
That's a very good.
That's a very good
Go
point
ahead,
there.
identify yourself.
Joey Chrysostomo with GATA. On a vehicle that's salvaged, let's say it's got total loss or it's in a flood, it's got completely flooded in a flood zone area with the typhoon and so forth, the values of those cars drop upwards of 60%. So, banks don't want to finance it, but they won't know if it doesn't have a salvage title. Because they're going to look at a blue book and say, okay, this car's worth 10 grand, but yet it's been in a major accident, it's been totaled, and not knowing it. Salvage vehicles can get insurance, liability insurance. You won't have a bank. I doubt you'll have a bank finance it, and the values are just so much less. What's happening here? A real life situation is. Someone buys a new car. 6 months later, it gets totaled. So they come in and buy another new car and say, yeah, my car got totaled. As the only dealer, let's say of that brand, whether it's a Hyundai or Mitsubishi or a Ford, they bring it in to trade in or want warranty. I got a 1-year-old car that I want my car fixed, and the buyer bought it from a third party, not knowing that it's a total loss vehicle. And then the frustration starts for that buyer. And I've seen it personally several times in the past 5 years where someone's bought a car not knowing that it's been in a major accident. And one of them was a Genesis, a $40,000 car. And so they can buy a car. Someone can buy it. A body shop can put it together, as long as the buyer knows that, okay, I'm buying this car from this body shop or this individual. It's a salvage title. I'm not going to pay. You want 10 grand for it? Blue Book is 11. It's up to the buyer to say, it's salvage. It's worth 3,000, and I'll pay you cash for it or what have you. Which is the fairest thing. Yeah. The buyer knows that this car has been in an accident, and there are a lot of totaled vehicles on Guam that make it back into the streets, with the buyers not knowing.
So I have some questions.
Sure.
So a car gets totaled. The insurance company pays me off whatever the total amount is, and the insurance company takes possession of the car. And has my title document also.
Yes.
Right? So when that little shop buys that car from the insurance company, along with it comes this title?
Yes.
Okay, so he fixes it up, and I buy it, and so that takes... So then are we saying then that when the insurance company then declares that vehicle as total, and before he sells it to me, he has got to have...
Report it to the Department of Motor Vehicle, Rev and Tax, and have the title branded. It'll have a big stamp, salvage, that stays on that title forever.
Okay. All right. That takes care of the vehicles here on Guam. But I also know that a lot of used cars get brought into Guam. How do we know that those vehicles get brought in?
Okay, this practice this situation is practice in the states. Every state has a branding title, and so there have been, for instance, there's several cars on Guam that come in with this, like the San Antonio flood in Texas, where they deemed salvage units are all totaled. They get branded titles. Number one,
all 50 states.
All 50 states. They get branded titles, and so we're able to pull up like Carfax. You could pull up Carfax, and it pulls the information from Department of Motor Vehicle in the mainland, and it'll show salvage vehicle. And so the buyer knows that there's no warranty. They're aware of what they've got.
Okay.
How far back does it go?
I don't know. That I don't know.
All right. So then that takes care of that situation off island.
Off island, yes.
It's on island that's not covered right now.
So that person here, when they go transfer the title to a Guam title, it'll have a salvage stamp on the California title or a New York title or what have you. And it's important that DMV follows it and marks salvage title on the new title for Guam.
If a Dodge vehicle gets brought into your place and the guy is wanting to claim his warranty on it, is your shop able to detect if this was a salvage?
Yes, we are. We're able to go into the system, and when we pull the VIN number, the VIN number will give us a history of the car from the day it's built to the day of the first service in New York to the day it's salvaged. We'll know who the selling dealer was, who the previous owners were. It's all there. That's on a Dodge.
Yeah, but that's on the that's in the mainland where right now the salvage title is being used.
Right.
But here on Guam,
we won't know about that he got into an accident.
do it.
In other words, if you got into an accident with your car and it was total loss and you didn't come back to us and we had no clue that Senator Ada's Charger got totaled, for instance, we would not know. And so the new buyer buys your car and brings it in for warranty. If we didn't know, a lot of times it's shame on us for not catching it.
Okay.
But it's more so it's shame on. I mean, it's really bad for the customer because I've seen it in our shop where we have to say, Senator Ada, I'm sorry, your car's not under warranty. This car was in a major accident, and you're going to say, what? I just bought it from so and so, and not knowing.
I think we did send out a notice of this hearing to the insurance companies. Did we? Yeah. Okay. I'm pretty sure that we did. I'm surprised none of them.
Yeah, we've had discussions with some of the insurance carriers, and they were all for it too.
Oh, they wouldn't have any problems with
No.
this? Okay.
But I'm not speaking for them.
Sure. Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions, so if you don't have anything else, then we'll...
Senator, thank you for putting this together.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you for coming down.
All right, we'll deem the
Thank you.
Bill 97-33 COR as having been duly heard. So, thank you very much. And there being no further bills on the docket here, this public hearing is adjourned, and the time is 3 minutes after 3. April 20, is it 26th?
June 26th.
Long day. June 26th. This hearing is adjourned.
Senator, before you leave, also we did send notice